We are going to turn this tree into a bigger, more prettier tree with lights. In the meantime, while we're doing that, I have some very creepy Reddit stories to read. The first one's from r/no sleep from a user named Rising Mac. My son's camera monitor alerted in the middle of the night. I checked it and saw my wife and son sitting on the bed. They weren't my wife and son. I'm a nurse and I currently work nights. It's a total drag, but I'm hopeful I can go to days soon since the same coworkers are planning retirement. Anyway, I was working one night when just after 3 a.m. my son's monitor alerted me to sound and movement. No big deal at all. He probably coughed loudly or sneezed or something. He's 3 now, so he generally sleeps all night. I bring it up on my phone and I see him and my wife sitting on the bed. Again, no big deal. He might have cried out or gotten scared or something. I was about to close the app when I noticed they were acting strange, almost creepy. And when I say almost creepy, I mean creepy as hell. They were sitting on the bed together, both of them just staring up at the camera with blank, emotionless stares. The night vision is black and white, so they had white, eerie-looking eyes. They didn't move at all, aside from their visible breathing. They just sat there staring at the camera. I close the app and give my wife a call to make sure everything's okay. I never get to call home on lunch, so in a way, this is kind of nice to get to talk to my family while at work. It rings a couple times before she answers with a very groggy, "Hello?" It was like she was dead asleep when I called, and she looked wide awake when on the camera. "Hey, you guys okay?" "Huh? Yeah. Buddy came in like 15 minutes ago." I'm confused here, since I saw them in his room a minute ago. Literally 60 seconds had passed since I closed the app and made the call. Wait, so you guys are in bed? Yeah, I fell back asleep right away. Everything okay? Everybody keeps waking me up. She's kind of annoyed. Hang on a sec. I put her on speaker and bring up the app, hoping I don't see it. When the app loads, I get that pang of intense nervousness in my stomach that I haven't had in a long time. Since I was a kid in school and realized while I was eating breakfast, a paper or something was due that day and I hadn't done it. My heart leaps into my throat. My wife and son are sitting on his bed, looking up at the camera. Same emotionless stares. "Hello? You guys are in bed, right?" "Yeah, we're trying to sleep." "Well, I'm looking at his camera, and I see you two sitting on his bed." "Huh? No, we're in our bed." "I know that's what you mean, but I'm looking at his bed, and you two are in there." "Hang on," she says. She's quiet for a sec while she brings up the camera on her phone. I hear this guttural, terrified gasp, like she had sucked all the air in the room into her lungs, filling them to capacity. I don't hear this kind of gasp from my wife often. Usually only when she's truly afraid, like during a jump scare in a movie, or one time when we turned her back on our son for literally a second, and he was down by the mailbox, inches from the road. I hear rustling of sheets, and the line goes dead. Of course, now I'm absolutely terrified myself, so I immediately call back. It goes to voicemail, so I call again. I call again and again with no answer. Finally, after about 4 minutes, she calls me. I tell you that 4 minutes felt like 40 years. "Hey, what's happening?" I ask. She's absolutely hysterical and crying. I can't understand a word she says. "Stop, slow down for just a second," I say. She slows down enough to explain that they are in the car and driving to her parents. She looked at the camera, and when she saw what was on it, she got up and grabbed our son and rushed downstairs and out the door. Didn't even close the garage. "Don't worry about it," I said. "I'll drive by when I get off and close it." We live in a generally safe neighborhood, so I'm not too concerned with the door being up. "You will not go in there," she says. "Hell no," I return. "Why are we on the camera?" she asked. "Is it a recording?" "I don't know," I return. "I'm going to keep watching it and see if there's anything I can tell. I'm going to do our code words with Buddy." We have code words because we're nerds. We've seen too many pod people in impostor movies, so we decided a long time ago to make code words with each other to be able to tell if one of us was an imposter. That's actually really smart. We have a couple code words, but we also have a 3-sentence story we recite together, each saying a different part, alternately of each other. I hear her on the phone saying the things we taught our son. He giggles as he says them. He does every time we practice. since he thinks they're a joke and doesn't have any idea of the real meaning. We're both convinced he's our son. My wife then says our part, and I'm convinced she's her. We made up these words as a complete joke to ourselves. I never once in my life ever imagined we'd actually need them. Unreal. She got to her parents safely, and it was hard to hang up. I told her we'll figure it out in the morning, hopefully just a glitch. She said she didn't think it was a glitch. When she was running out, she had to run by our son's room, and the door was open. There's a little flashing light on the back of the camera that indicates it's connected to the internet. It just gives off just enough light that when she ran by, she thought she saw, out of the corner of her eye, a shadowy outline of what could have been an adult sitting on our son's bed. It sent chills down my spine to think about. Knowing they were safe and out of the house is the only thing that kept me at work that night. It was a long 4 hours, but I kept checking the camera every chance I got. Sure enough, they were still sitting on the bed, staring up at the camera with emotionless gazes. I studied them to see if I could see any pattern, from their breathing to their blinking. Their breathing was steady and looked normal. It was their blinking that would tell me if this was some kind of bizarre, time-looped freak accident video or not. I intently stare at my phone and count the seconds between each blink, telling myself if this is a loop, then their blink should even occur at the same time each time. There was no pattern to their blinking. It was erratic and random, just as a person blinking should be. The passing hours are what finally sealed the deal that this was not a weird looped video of some kind. My son's window is visible on camera, and I see on camera that it's getting lighter outside his room. His curtains keep out just enough light to prevent the camera from exciting night vision, but lets in just enough to be able to tell the sun is rising. I try to figure out what the hell I'm going to do before I leave work. Calling the police comes to mind, but I talk myself out of it. First of all, what am I supposed to say? Someone is in my house that looks like my wife but isn't? Worse yet, what if they are entities of some kind and the police do go over and it kills them or something? I decide to tell a coworker about it. He's a firm believer in the paranormal and might have a suggestion. I show him the video and tell him the story. His initial response of, "That's creepy as hell," doesn't help much, but he says he wants to go over and check it out. He says we both should to see if not my wife will try and act like my wife. I tell him absolutely not, and he says we should at least go to the house, even if we don't go in. I agree on that since I wanted to close the garage. We got to my house and walked around the perimeter first. Not sure what we wanted to accomplish by that, but it felt like something we should do. The curtains were all drawn since nobody was there to open them in the morning, so we couldn't see anything. I went to close the garage and suddenly had this overwhelming urge to go inside and investigate. Wow, this is the guy that dies first in the horror movie. Like, what is wrong with people? It was like I just had to know what was going on, so in we went. We walked through the kitchen towards the foyer where the stairs are. It's so quiet in our house right now, you could hear a feather drop. Forget the pin. We stop at the bottom of the stairs and wait a few seconds. I look at the camera again, and they are still sitting there. I've never been so scared in my life. My coworker puts his foot on the first step, and I suddenly say, "Stop," loudly. "Forget this. We're out of here," I tell him. "Come on." I start making my way back to the kitchen. We hear a loud creak in the floor from upstairs. It's my son's room. He has a very loud, creaky board right in the middle of his floor that's almost impossible not to step on. My wife and I are still deciding if we ever want to fix it because it will alert us if he's ever up to no good when he gets older, trying to sneak out or something. Come on," I yell as I motion for him to move. We're out of the house in about 2 seconds. Out on the street, I check my phone. Now only not my son was sitting on the bed. Same blank stare. Not my wife was gone. "Oh my gosh," my coworker says. "That was stupid of us. Do not tell my wife we went inside. She would be so ungodly mad if she found out what we just did." I use my garage door opener in my car to close the door. Wow, you could have done that from the beginning. Before we leave, I look at the camera again. Not my wife is back on the bed with not my son, both staring blankly up at the camera, blinking every few seconds. That was all about 4 days ago now. Not my wife and not my son are still sitting on the bed, staring up at the camera. They haven't moved a millimeter. We obviously haven't gone back to our house. What do we do now? Okay, so that was part one of that story. We're about to read part two, but I feel like there doesn't really need to be a part two because any sane person is going to first call the cops, and then naturally something bad's going to happen to the cops that go there. So then you just burn the house down and you just never go back. Anyways, here's part two. I'm sorry it's taken so long. It's been an emotional month. I've felt like I'm losing my mind, or already lost it. I've been in the hospital for 3 weeks. You'll remember I left off at my wife's parents' house, not sure what the hell to do. My wife and I argued about it. My in-laws said call the priest. I told my wife we're calling the cops, and that's it. The day we finally called the cops would be day 6. Not my family was still sitting on the goddamn bed, staring at the center. I told the dispatcher there were intruders in my house, leaving out the part where they looked exactly like my family. I told her we were out of the house, but I would meet the police there. She dispatched 2 units. My wife begged me not to go. I told her I had to be there. I had a foolproof plan. I would take her mom's iPhone and FaceTime with my wife while showing the police the camera on my phone. They would see this as a messed up situation and hopefully proceed with caution. My coworker friend said he would come with me as well. My friend and I beat the cops to my house. Like most of you mentioned in the comments previously, I was packing heat. I have a concealed carry, so I had my 1911 45 on me. I wasn't concerned this would bother the cops, as I was going to inform them of my permit and that I was currently carrying. What I wasn't going to tell them was that I had my father-in-law's AR-15 in my trunk. It's almost funny how many of you mentioned that that was the way to go on my previous entry. I didn't plan on telling the cops about it because I was not planning on needing it. They would come armed and prepared. They showed up and I let them know I was armed and then enacted my plan. I initially told them the story. They looked at each other like I was crazy and they didn't believe me. I FaceTimed my wife so they could see she was not in fact in the house, despite what our camera was showing. They still didn't seem to believe me, but this did pique their interest. I hung up with my wife and told her I'd call her back as soon as we knew something. So now we're sure this isn't a recording, an officer stated, repeating what I said. It's not. The day-night cycle has changed every day. Their blinking is erratic and not cyclical, like it was a repeat, I said. I know it's a stupid question, but your wife isn't a twin, the other officer asked. I told him no. Honestly, that's a good question to ask. That's smart. My friend spoke up. I have an idea. Turn the volume up. I'll go throw a pebble at the window. He went around back while I turned up the volume to the max. Okay, I'm tossing. We heard the light tick sound from outside, but the 1-second delay on the camera came in loud and clear through my phone. Not my wife moved at the sound of the pebble hitting the window. The first time I'd actually seen her move, aside from the time she wasn't on screen when I initially went inside our house the first day. She turned her head toward the window just slightly before turning back to the camera. Okay, so this is live, an officer said. Okay, sir, I need you and your friend to stay outside here. We're going to go in and find out what's going on here. Should you ask for more units? I asked hopefully. Not at this time. We're going to assess the situation first. They don't appear to be armed, but we're going to be cautious. I opened the garage for them, and they made their way in towards my kitchen door. They radioed dispatch that they were headed in and to stand by. They disappeared into my house. A few seconds after they went in, the camera went out. Oh man. I wanted to vomit, and I felt like if I put my fingers in my mouth, I'd be able to feel my heart, since it had leapt so far up into my throat. Damn, I yelled to my friend. I immediately popped the trunk and got my rifle out and ran into the garage, my friend right behind me. We got inside just in time to hear a low, guttural howl from upstairs, demonic sounding almost, along with raised voices from the police. There were several shots. Need backup, shots fired. He was cut off. Oh my God, my friend howled. He was scared shitless, but so was I. God damn it, I knew it, I said, running up the stairs. My son's room is the first one you come to after getting upstairs, so his wall is also what you see as you walk up the stairs. As I reached the top, I laid into the wall with my rifle. It has a 30-round magazine, but I felt like I fired 100 shots. I fired all over the place, knowing full well the ammo would go through the wall like it was paper. Concentrating on where my son's bed would be, but also near the door, and toward the floor as well, in case whatever those things were thought to duck. We heard shrieks of pain coming from the room, then nothing. Aren't the cops in there? My friend and I paused for a moment before deciding to go in because the camera was still out. We heard a whimpering coming from the room. There was a dead cop in the hallway we had to step over. It was awful, and I'll never be able to unsee it. His head was several feet away from his body and the threshold to our guest room. We found the other cop in my son's room, right inside the doorway. He had several large holes in his torso, as if he'd been impaled. Jeez. Exactly what I was afraid would happen had happened. I called the cops, and whatever these things were killed them. When we entered the room, we found the source of the whimpering was not my wife. She was laying on her back on the floor, holding her torso that was bullet-ridden and breathing heavy. The scene was awful. I can hardly put into words how awful it was. I now know, just like I did then, they weren't my family. It shouldn't have been hard. I should have been able to just go in and finish it, but instead I fell to my knees. Not my wife begged for her life. "I don't want to die," she whimpered. "I wanted to have more kids. I can't die now." I looked over at not my son, who had to be dead. He had taken 2 shots, or at least that, to the head, or what was left of it. He had several more in his torso and 1 or 2 in his legs and arms. If you have kids, seeing their lifeless, bullet-ridden body is a special kind of hell. Again, I knew it wasn't my son, but it was. I was going to be sick. I had killed my family. I turned back to not my wife. She was acting just like my wife. It even mimicked her anxiety about death that she has had in the past year or so. "It's not her, man." I forgot my friend was even there. "It's not her. Shoot it." I know what you guys are thinking. How many times has this happened in movies, and you scream at your TV for the main character to just shoot the impostor because it's not their loved one? I guess movies get it right somehow. I'll never roll my eyes at the character who can't kill an impostor again. "Please don't shoot me," it begged. My hands were shaking as I aimed at it. Why couldn't I do it? I knew this wasn't my wife. "Listen, man," my friend began calmly. "Look at it. Its blood is yellow. It's not your family." Was it yellow? It was. Seeing my family slain was so traumatic, I hadn't even noticed their blood wasn't red. I steadied my aim, and not my wife suddenly stopped begging. She began that guttural, terrifying shriek, and something black or gray started to protrude from her mouth, like a tentacle or something, and I fired. At that range, her head more or less exploded. Whatever these things were, they appeared to be mortal. I was still on my knees, and my friend was out in the hallway just outside the door. We heard the sounds of approaching police sirens. I'd forgotten one of the cops had gotten a shots fired call over the radio before being killed. It seemed like it had been hours, but it had only been about 5 minutes since the police had gone in. My friend went downstairs to let the police know what to expect. I stood up and slowly made my way into the hallway. I was lightheaded and felt like I was going to be sick. My bedroom is adjacent to my son's, so the doorway is about a foot to the right of my son's doorway. My door was closed, but as I exited my son's room, my door opened. Not me walked out into the hallway, wearing exactly the same thing I was at that time. I was shocked in place. I couldn't move, but it did. It walked towards me, and its right arm turned black and morphed into what appeared to be a tentacle. It was wiggling around like a squid or octopus appendage. When he thrust his arm at me, it solidified and impaled me through my abdomen. It then stabbed me in the left leg, just above the kneecap. I fell to the ground in pain. Its tentacle arm was wiggling again. "Why did you kill my family?" it asked. When it spoke, its voice changed pitch several times. It was my voice, then much deeper, then normal again. It alternated several times, saying that one sentence. It moved in closer. The rifle was gone, but I still had my .45. I pulled it out and got a shot off in its right knee. It howled. As Not Me fell to his knee, I fired a couple more shots, getting 2 into its abdomen and left side of its ribs. It breathed heavily for a few seconds before I used the last of my strength to aim proper and shot Not Me in the face. Its blood was also yellow. I lay there bleeding out, thinking this was it for sure. I still had some strength from adrenaline kicking in, so I took my belt off and tried to make a tourniquet for my leg. With my stomach wound, it was hard to give it a good yank to tighten it. I then took my shirt off and balled it up and packed my stomach wound and applied as much pressure as I could. Being a nurse probably saved my life. I passed out, but the measures I took must have kept me alive long enough for EMS to arrive. I heard raised voices and the sound of pounding coming up the stairs before I went out. It was probably a cop, but I felt pressure from somebody trying to keep my wound packed before I went out. I was in and out of consciousness as EMS arrived, along with probably every cop in the city. I was wheeled downstairs and put in an ambulance. But while I was being loaded onto the gurney upstairs, I heard cops freaking out, and rightfully so. They'd lost 2 brothers, and there were 3 other bodies. Did he kill his brother? Are they twins? Probably referring to Not Me's dead body. Or his whole family? Put him on armed guard while at the hospital. He'll probably be getting charged. As I was getting placed into the ambulance, I saw my friend talking to a group of about 10 cops, all listening very intently to what he was saying. I went out again in the ambulance. I woke up in the ER. My wounds had been treated. The tentacle hadn't been more than a few inches wide, so it was just slightly larger than a knife. They'd sewn me up, and I found that I was currently receiving a blood transfusion due to blood loss at my home. My wife had authorized them to do whatever they needed while I was unconscious. She was also extremely pissed that I went in the house. We're okay now, but that's a story for another day. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks since I ended up getting an infection and almost went septic. I needed quite a few antibiotics. For the entire 3 weeks, I had cops in my room with questions. About a week after they released me and no longer had me under armed guard, I told them absolutely everything, not caring if it made sense or not. And thank God my friend had come with me since he was able to corroborate this weird story. Midway through my hospital stay, men with suits came to pay me a visit. They were government, I knew right away. They said they were FBI, but I don't know if I believe that. They wanted to talk about not my family. The police chief and the coroner were involved, and it was very hush-hush. They made it clear that this was not to get out to the public. This is where I have to apologize probably for an anticlimactic ending to this ordeal. I don't know what Not Me and my family were, neither do they. The only thing we know is that they were sentient creatures that looked like us and had yellow blood. I begged the coroner to tell me about their autopsy, but he said he wasn't allowed to say. He must have felt bad for me since I received a bouquet of flowers a couple days later. The card inside the envelope read, "We don't know what they are. They have the same organs we do, but in different parts of their body, aside from their brain. But what's red and pink inside us is green and yellow inside them. They're humanoid creatures, but whatever they aren't human. The government thinks they may be extraterrestrial. Destroy this letter ASAP." We had our house professionally cleaned. It was almost surely a government team since they contacted us on behalf of the police. We couldn't find any Google reviews or a website for the company online. My wife and I are not going back to our house. We would love to burn it down, but there's no way to do that and avoid suspicion of arson at this point. We'll end up taking a huge loss on the property since everyone in our neighborhood knows there was an incident involving multiple deaths in the house, but don't know what actually will happen. It'll be hard to sell, but eventually it will. We're going to move on from here. I told everyone at work it was a home invasion and they bought it. I'll go back to work in a couple weeks and we'll start looking for a new house. Again, I'm sorry. I know everyone wanted a concrete ending and to know exactly what the hell those things were, but we just don't know. Alien sounds good to me. I've been thinking if they were supernatural or actual demons, gunfire wouldn't have been able to kill them. It's just hard to say. If they were aliens, why did they just sit there and creep in our house for a week? They didn't even try to take over our lives. It's hard to wrap my head around. If it is aliens, keep your eyes peeled out there. There could be more of them. This could have been a much shorter story. I know if it were me, or probably most of you, we wouldn't have been in this situation because we'd have just burned the house down right there in the beginning, right? The next story is called The Road to Eldama. It's from r/stories from a user named Obsidian Murmurs. You learn to respect the weather when you drive for a living in Kenya. Out here, the road decides what kind of man you are long before you reach the next town. My name's Daniel Mwangi, 38 years old, and I've spent a lot of time behind the wheel on long-distance buses, hauling passengers up and down the highways that cut through the Rift Valley. I'd signed that night roster at the Nakuru Depot. The town sits deep in the valley, about halfway between Nairobi and the Western Highlands. By the time I took the Eldama ravine route, thunder was already pacing all over the valley. The air smelled of diesel and dust turning to mud. In this part of the country, storms don't pass. They settle in, sometimes for days, until the road becomes a long, black river that reminds every accident it's ever seen. Still, someone had to drive. That someone was me. They called it a short trip, 2 hours from the Nakuru to Eldama ravine. But anyone who's done that stretch at night knows better. The road winds like it's trying to remember itself, with blind turns and half-finished guardrails. When the rain comes, even the headlights look nervous. I'd been doing this for 14 years. And 2 years ago, on this same road, I killed 10 people. Oh my gosh. A brake line burst on the descent. By the time I hit the curve, there was nothing left to stop us. I managed to throw myself out through the side door just before the bus went over the edge. Holy crap. That's the only reason I'm still here. Since then, I've driven only short daytime routes. Local, safe. But when the dispatcher said the night driver had fallen sick and they needed someone to cover the midnight Eldama run, I said yes. Maybe it was guilt, maybe pride, maybe I wanted to prove to myself the road still didn't own me. The bus smelled of rain, oil, and tiredness. There were 8 passengers when we left the depot. 2 students with backpacks, a woman in a yellow scarf, and an old man with a walking stick. 2 laborers in muddy boots, and a young couple sharing a pair of headphones. I counted them, a habit I'd picked up after the crash. 8 souls and me. The wipers fought to keep up. The headlights carved 2 pale tunnels through the rain. But the world beyond them was black and endless. The radio crackled with static. Somewhere ahead, lightning flashed, painting the road silver for half a heartbeat before it vanished again. We picked up another pair of passengers, just past the weighbridge. A woman standing in the rain with a small child pressed to her shoulder. She didn't wave, she just stood there, straight-backed in the rain, like she'd been waiting exactly for this bus. No one should have been walking that stretch at that hour, but she was there, so I slowed. She climbed on board without a word. The child didn't cry, didn't even move. Rain dripped from her shawl onto the floor. I wanted to tell her to dry off, to be careful not to slip, but something in her eyes made the words stop halfway. She walked down the aisle and sat 3 rows from the back. 10 passengers, same as before. The rain got heavier as we climbed toward the highlands. In Kenya, storms can feel alive, like they're thinking. They breathe, shift, and circle around until you forget what dry air feels like. The wind slammed the bus from both sides, and every gust sounded like a crowd whispering outside. The passengers had gone quiet. No one talked, not even the students. The couple sat apart now. The old man's head dipped forward in sleep, but I could see his eyes open in the mirror. The kilometer signs began to blur through the rain. Eldama Ravine, 24 kilometers. I saw the number and felt my chest tighten. That stretch of road, I knew it. It was near the spot where the crash had happened 2 years ago. The same bend, the same slope. The memories came back all at once. The horn, the screams, the sudden drop. I gripped the wheel a little tighter and kept driving. That's when the whispers started. At first, I thought it was the radio again. Bits of half-heard chatter from truck drivers or weather reports. But the voices weren't coming from the speakers. They were coming from the back of the bus. Soft, layered, like a dozen people trying to remember the same prayer. I looked in the rearview mirror. For a second, everything looked normal. The pale outlines of tired travelers, faces turned toward the windows. Then, lightning flashed. The light froze everything. Every face, every drop of water in the air, and in that half second, none of them looked alive. Their skin was pale and wet. Their mouths hung open, and their eyes, every single one of them, were staring directly at me. The flash ended. Darkness again. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my fingers ached. The wipers thudded once, twice, trying to catch up with the rain. I glanced at the mirror again. Everyone looked normal now. Tired, half asleep. The woman with the child sat still and motionless, her shawl dripping slowly onto the floor. I told myself I was overtired, and I kept driving. But the whispers didn't stop. The next lightning bolt hit close. I felt it through the steering column, and this time, when the bus lit up, I saw it clearly. The old man's face was gone, only the dark shape of skull beneath thin, blistered skin. The student's eyes were white, rolled up, empty. The couple sat stiffly, their hands fused together by something dark and wet. And the woman with the child, her shawl had slipped, revealing that what she was holding wasn't a child at all. It was a bundle of soaked cloth, folded tight around nothing. The light went out again. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt locked from the inside. The bus engine roared as I pressed the accelerator, trying to outrun something that had already caught me. The whispers behind me grew louder. They weren't random anymore. They were saying my name. "Daniel," they murmured. "Daniel, you left us." I gripped the wheel tighter. My vision blurred. The wipers couldn't keep up. Lightning flashed again, and now every passenger had turned to face me. Every seat, every set of eyes. I could feel their gaze pressing against the back of my neck like cold hands. I wanted to pull over, but there was no shoulder, no safe space, just a drop in the darkness. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't see the curve. I swear I didn't." The whispering stopped. Silence filled the bus, thick and heavy, like water closing over a drowning man. Then one voice, not angry, not loud, just sad. "You should have said it sooner." The headlights flickered. The engine stuttered once, twice, then died. The bus coasted in silence, rolling to a stop in the middle of the rain. I turned around. They were all staring, not moving, not breathing. The woman in the shawl raised her head. Her lips parted. "Forgive us, too." The world exploded in white light. I woke up gasping. For a moment, I thought I was still driving, still gripping the wheel, but I was in my apartment. My flat in Nakuru was silent except for the rain. A single room above a mechanic's garage, the kind of place that always smelled faintly of rubber and rust. The window was open. The curtains were soaked. Rain tapped against the sill. I sat up slowly. My clothes were drenched. Mud streaked my shoes, and a puddle had formed beneath the bed. In my pocket, the keys to the bus route. It was morning. The rain had softened to a drizzle. My throat hurt like when it does when you've been shouting. Was it a dream? A nightmare? If it was, then why did my hands still smell of diesel and rain? That evening, I drove out to the bend, the crash site, the same stretch where the bus went off the road 2 years ago. It's easy to miss now, just a stretch of cracked guardrail and a cluster of wildflowers growing through the mud. Someone had left plastic roses there once, now faded white by the sun. I parked, got out, and stood in the drizzle. The road was silent, except for the occasional hiss of tires far away. I knelt, touched the cold ground, and whispered, "I'm sorry." The words came easier this time. I said them again and again, for every voice, for every face. I thought of each and every one of those 10 poor souls and said a soft prayer for them, for every seat that never made it to Eldama. When I finally stood, the air was still. No wind, no movement, nothing. And then, just as I turned to leave, a small breeze brushed my cheek. Gentle, cool. The kind that shouldn't exist when the trees around you are perfectly still. It only lasted a second, but I knew. It was enough. I took it as a sign, a whisper of forgiveness from those I couldn't save. That night, I slept for the first time in years. And in my dream, the bus was full again. Not of ghosts, but of people laughing softly in the dark. Their faces were just faces. Their eyes were calm, and for the first time, the road to Eldama didn't feel endless. It just felt quiet and forgiving. So that was an original story by somebody on Reddit. That's really good. Like, it doesn't even seem like it's written by AI or anything. Like, that's a really good story. This person should write a book. Next one is called My Friend Told Me to Kill Him If He Ever Knocked on My Door. It's from r/scary stories from a user named TheReal1_1. I thought he was joking at first. We were sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m., lights off, drinking some coffee, because neither one of us could sleep. He kept checking the windows like he expected something to be standing there. If I ever show up at your place unannounced, he said very calmly, don't open the door. I laughed it off thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. I'm serious, he continued. If I knock, if I call, if I text you asking to come in, don't. And if I insist, if I sound desperate, you need to kill me. That's when I stopped smiling and laughing altogether. I was confused. Why would my friend that I've known for long tell me this? That's when he told me what happened up north. He'd gone hiking alone, deep into a stretch of forest that locals avoided. No trails, no markers, just trees that looked identical no matter how far you walked. On the third day, he realized something was following him. Not stalking, but keeping pace. He'd stop and it would stop. He'd walk and it would walk. When he finally saw it, it was standing between two trees, half hidden like it hadn't finished deciding what shape to be. It almost looked human. Almost. Too tall, arms a little too long, head tilted like it was listening for instructions. When it opened its mouth, it spoke in his voice, but it used the wrong words. Like it had learned his language by watching someone mouth sentences through glass. Help me, I'm lost. My friend ran. That night, it stood outside his tent and practiced. He said he could hear it repeating his name over and over, changing the tone each time. Calm, panicked, angry, laughing, crying. It never touched the tent. It just learned. By morning, there were 2 sets of footprints leading away from the campsite. Only one set came back. When he finished telling me this, he looked smaller somehow, like something had been hollowed out. It followed me home, he said. Not right away. It waited. That's what they do. I told him he needed sleep. I even asked him if he wanted to go to therapy. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. If I come to you, he said, eyes wide, it means it worked. He left before sunrise. 2 days later, he stopped answering his phone. A week later, I got a text from his number. Can I crash at yours tonight? No punctuation, no nickname. He has always used both. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. Please, man, I really need help. I locked my door. That night, there was a knock. 3 slow taps, familiar rhythm. I didn't move an inch. From the hallway outside my apartment, his voice called out, perfectly steady. I know you're awake. I stayed silent. Something shifted on the other side of the door. A long breath, then softer. I told you this would happen. The handle turned. It didn't open, but it turned. I didn't sleep at all. This morning, I checked my phone. There was one last text sent at 4:12 a.m. It's better at being me now. I don't know what to do, because an hour ago, my neighbor asked why my friend was standing outside my door all night. Said he never moved, said he just stood there, smiling and waiting. I don't know what's happened to my friend, but that thing, whatever it was, wasn't him. All right, that's a solid skinwalker story. Gosh, that's absolutely terrifying. I don't know if I'm going to sleep tonight. This next one is called I'm a personal trainer at a 24-hour gym. I found out why the night shift clients lose weight so fast. It's from r/scary stories from a user named David Herrick. January is the month of lies. If you've worked in the fitness industry as long as I have, you eventually learn to hate the calendar. January 2nd marks the beginning of the migration of repentant souls. They arrive in schools, wearing clothes that still smell like the store, carrying colorful water bottles, fueled by the fragile determination of someone who spent 3 weeks stuffing their face with holiday roast and sides, and now wants a pop star's body before carnival. We call this Project Summer. I call it Project Desperation. My name is Danilo. I'm a personal trainer and floor instructor at Iron Fit 24 Hours, one of those low-cost gym chains that have spread through Sao Paulo like a fungal plague. Black walls, neon yellow lights, electronic music played way too loud, and membership fees that are way too cheap. I work the shift nobody wants, midnight to 6 in the morning. It's a lonely shift. The crowd at that hour is usually made up of insomniacs, ER doctors, cops, and a few antisocial meatheads who hate sharing equipment. The sound of weight plates clanking echoes in the empty warehouse like gunshots. The smell is a mix of rubber, citrus disinfectant, and cold sweat. But this specific January, something was different. It started with Mariana. Mariana had been a regular student on my shift for about 6 months. A nurse, 30-something, slightly overweight. She was always nice, the type who brings coffee for the instructor and chats about TV shows between sets on the leg press. Her goal was to lose 5 kg, about 11 pounds. A healthy, realistic goal. When I came back from my New Year's break on January 3rd, Mariana was there. It was 3:15 a.m. I was at the front desk, fighting off sleep when she walked in. I almost didn't recognize her. In less than 2 weeks, Mariana looked like she had lost 10 or 15 kilos. Her workout clothes, once tight, now hung off her body like empty sacks. Her face was gaunt, her cheekbones protruding like blades beneath pale skin. There were deep, purple circles around her eyes that looked glazed over, focused on nothing. "Mariana," I called out, stepping out from behind the counter. "Wow, long time no see. You look different." She didn't smile. The old Mariana would have made a joke about cutting carbs, but this Mariana just turned her head slowly in my direction, like a robot with rusted gears. "Need to train," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, dry. "Sure, but are you okay? You're pale." "Spinning room," she said, ignoring my question. "Kleber said the spinning room is closed for maintenance." Kleber was the unit manager. A guy who looked like he was assembled from Lego pieces made of meat and steroids. Teeth too white, a fake orange tan, and an aggressive corporate energy that made me nauseous. He was never at the gym at dawn. His shift was strictly 9 to 5. "Is Kleber here?" I asked, confused. Mariana didn't answer. She marched toward the back of the gym, where the bike room was located. It was a closed room with soundproofing and glass windows, which, I noticed now, had been covered with brown butcher paper from the inside. "Maintenance," read a crooked sign on the door. Mariana typed a code into the keypad on the door. The light turned green. She went in. A blast of hot air escaped the room before the door closed. Hot and humid, and with a strange smell. It didn't smell like sweat. I went back to the counter, uneasy. Over the next few nights, the pattern repeated, and it got worse. It wasn't just Mariana. I started noticing a group. There were about 10 of them, men and women, varying ages, but they all shared the same cadaverous aesthetic. Gray skin, sudden and excessive thinness, trembling hands, and that dead fish stare. They always arrived between 3 and 3:30 a.m. They didn't speak to me. They didn't use their fingerprint at the turnstile, which was against the rules, but the system seemed to release them automatically. They went straight for the spinning room, typed in the password, and disappeared inside for exactly 1 hour. Not one of them touched the weights. None of them drank water. They walked in and they crawled out, leaning on walls, soaked in a sweat that looked oily. I tried to talk to Kleber at the shift change at 6 a.m. Kleber, what's going on in the bike room? I asked, grabbing my backpack. The night crew is using it, but the sign says maintenance. And Mariana, man, she's sick. She lost weight way too fast. Kleber was drinking his whey protein, scrolling on his phone. He didn't even look up. It's a high-performance group, Danilo. New franchise protocol. Metabolic HIIT. Elite stuff. Don't worry about it. They pay for a black diamond plan. But they look like crack addicts, Kleber. Seriously, their skin is melting off. And what is that smell? Kleber finally looked at me. The white smile vanished. His eyes went cold. Are you a doctor, Danilo? No, I'm a physical trainer. Then train physiques and leave the management to me. If they get sick, they signed a liability waiver. Your job is to watch the weight room and make sure no one steals the dumbbells. The bike room is rented for a private project. Don't meddle, stay in your lane. He patted my shoulder, a pat that was a little too hard. The job market is tough, Danilo. Don't lose your job over curiosity. I went home, but I couldn't sleep. The image of Mariana haunted me. I knew what drugs did. I've seen people abuse diuretics, T3, clenbuterol, but this was different. They weren't just drying out fat. They looked like they were being consumed from the inside out. Last night, I decided I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. It was 3:40 a.m. The zombie group, as I'd mentally nicknamed them, had been inside the spinning room for 20 minutes. The gym was empty, except for them and me. I went to the door. I pressed my ear against the glass covered by the brown paper. The soundproofing was good, but not perfect. I could hear the hum of the bike spinning, but I didn't hear music. Spinning classes have loud music, shouting, motivation. In there, the only human sound was moaning, muffled screams of pain, crying, and someone vomiting. I tried the handle, locked. I looked at the keypad, 4 digits. I remembered the gym's anniversary, nothing. I tried today's date, nothing. Then I remembered Kleber's ego. He had a tattoo on his arm, 1985, the year he was born. I typed 1985 and the light turned green. I took a deep breath, pulled my shirt up to cover my nose, and opened the door. The heat hit me like a physical punch. The temperature inside must have been bordering on 122 degrees. The air was thick, unbreathable, saturated with humidity and that chemical smell of rotten vinegar mixed with boiled meat. The room was dim, lit only by red emergency lights along the baseboards. There were 12 bikes, all occupied. But they weren't just pedaling. Mariana was on the front bike, strapped to the machine. There were Velcro straps binding her wrists to the handlebars and her feet to the pedals. She was pedaling at a frantic, inhuman pace. Her legs were spinning so fast they were a blur. But she wasn't doing it voluntarily. Her bike and the others were connected to an external motor. The motor was forcing the pedals to turn. If she stopped applying force, her legs would be snapped by the mechanical movement. She had to keep up with the machine's rhythm to avoid having her bones ground to dust. But the worst part wasn't the forced movement. The worst part was the masks. Every student was wearing a transparent oxygen mask, connected by tubes that went up to the ceiling, feeding into the AC vents. Inside the masks, a yellowish gas was being pumped in. Mariana looked at me when I entered. Her eyes were red with burst blood vessels. Her skin glistened with sweat, but also with blisters. Small burned blisters covered her arms. She tried to scream, but the mask muffled the sound. She was cooking, literally. "My God," I shouted, running to her bike. I tried to undo the Velcro. They were locked with industrial zip ties. I looked at the bike's panel, but there was no stop button. The wiring went straight into the wall. The other students didn't even look at me. Some seemed passed out, heads hanging low, but their legs kept spinning, spinning, driven by the motor, tearing muscles and ligaments in unconscious bodies. "What the hell are you doing here?" The voice came from the back of the room, from the shadows. Kleber was there. He was wearing a white hazmat suit and professional gas mask. He was holding a tablet. "Turn this off," I screamed, coughing from the heat and the chemical smell. "You're killing them. Mariana is burning up with fever." Kleber walked calmly towards me. He looked huge in that suit. "They're not dying, Danilo. They're metabolizing. Do you know what DNP is? 2,4-dinotrophenol?" He pointed to the tubes in the ceiling. "It's an industrial compound used to make explosives in World War I. The workers who handled it lost weight until they vanished. It uncouples oxidative phosphorylation. Basically, it makes the cells stop storing energy and turn everything into heat. Fat turns into fire. This is poison." I tried to lunge at him, but the heat was making me dizzy. My legs felt like lead. "It's efficiency," Kleber shouted, his voice muffled by the mask. "They signed the contract, Danilo. They wanted to lose 10 kilos in a week. They begged for this. I'm just giving them what they asked for. The gas raises their basal body temperature to 40 degrees. They burn 5,000 calories an hour sitting there. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it cooks the internal organs a little bit, but look at her." He pointed to a woman in the second row. She was skeletal. "She walked in here wearing a size 14 on Monday. Today is Friday, and she's a size 4. Her Project Summer is done. Who cares if she needs dialysis for the rest of her life? She'll look skinny in a bikini. You're sick." I tried to punch him. It was a mistake. I had been breathing that toxic air for 2 minutes. My strength was gone. My punch was slow. Pathetic. Kleber just grabbed my arm and shoved me. I fell onto the rubber floor. The floor was hot. It burned my hand. I saw Mariana looking at me. A tear of blood ran down under her mask. She mouthed something. I read her lips. "Kill me." I stood up, stumbling, and ran for the door. I needed to call the police. I needed to get out of that oven. I grabbed the handle, locked. "The session isn't over, Danilo," Kleber said, typing something onto the tablet. "The locks are automatic. They only open when the thermal cycle ends. 30 minutes left." I heard a mechanical click come from the ceiling. The hissing of gas got louder. "And since you're here, you've seen the franchise's trade secret. I think you need a workout too. You've been looking a little bloated, Danilo. Too much beer over the holidays?" I felt my throat close up. The air was turning yellow. Kleber walked towards me. He wasn't going to put me on a bike. He didn't need to. Just being in that room was enough. "DNP in gaseous form is absorbed through the skin and mucous membranes," Kleber explained, as if giving a biomechanics lecture. "Without the mask, you'll absorb a lethal dose in, let's say, 10 minutes. Your temperature will rise to 42 degrees, your proteins will denature, your brain will cook inside your skull. It's a quick death, but hot." I ran to the windows covered with brown paper. I pounded on the glass. Double-tempered glass, unbreakable without a hammer. I screamed for help, but who would hear? The gym was empty, and the soundproofing was perfect. Kleber sat on a stool in the corner, crossed his legs, and kept monitoring the data on the tablet. "Save your oxygen, Danilo. The more you move, the hotter you get." I felt sweat break out on my forehead. It wasn't normal sweat. It was a flood. My shirt was soaked in seconds. My heart started beating out of rhythm. I felt a burning in my stomach, as if I had swallowed hot coals. My vision began to blur, yellowing at the edges. I looked at Mariana. She had passed out, but her legs kept spinning, driven by the relentless motor. I heard a dry snap. Crack. Her knee had broken. The bone tore through the skin, white and shiny, but the machine kept forcing her leg to turn, grinding the joint with every rotation. Kleber didn't even look. I fell to my knees. The floor was boiling. I tried to crawl to the door. My skin was red, throbbing, and I could feel my blood bubbling in my veins. It felt like being inside a giant microwave. 20 minutes left. Kleber's voice sounded distant, metallic. "Hang in there. Think of the results. Think about how shredded you'll look in the coffin." My eyes are swelling. I think my tears are evaporating before they fall. I'm writing this on my phone's notes app, with fingers slippery from sweat and the grease leaking from my pores. The battery is dying. The phone is overheating too. If anyone finds this phone, if anyone finds what's left of us, don't believe the official report. They'll say it was a fire. They'll say it was a short circuit in the sauna. It wasn't. It was Project Summer. Kleber is standing up now. He's coming towards me with a syringe. To speed up the process, he says. I'm so hot. I just wanted the air conditioning to work. Mariana stopped moving. The machine keeps spinning her legs, but her head is fallen back. Her mask is full of vomit. Kleber is smiling. It's January. It's the month of Project Summer. It's the month of lies. Bro, this has definitely happened at a Planet Fitness or like something like that. No, for real though, that's terrifying. Like what? You have to be so unlucky for something like this to happen at your job. Like you could work anywhere, but you picked a gym with a sociopath that doesn't like overweight people. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, drop a like and subscribe. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. Peace.